Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. How does one cultivate faith? Saddha. When is it self-doubt? When is it insufficient saddha? So I like the word trust myself. Saddha has all these words have various contextual translations. So all words are in the context of the sentences they're placed. So you can have different nuances of meaning in the same word, obviously. So for me, like I often ask people, so why do you do this? Why do you give up 10 days of your life? Maybe you don't consider that giving up, but work very hard. And why do you meditate? Why do you come to this? And each of us will have our own reasons. So my sense of faith is that it's an evolutionary thing. It's not a fixed thing. And I think it's true for everyone. If you take faith as belief, then you could say, well, you have faith in the Four Noble Truths and the Buddha's enlightenment and Paticca so that would be a doctrinal way of talking about a Buddhist faith. But then maybe if you looked at a Mahayana text, Prajnaparamita or one of the Mahayana texts, you think, well, I don't know what they're talking about here. So I don't have faith in that. But that would be all on a belief level. Fair enough, we have that. But I think as meditators and contemplatives, I think we're quite pragmatic, and we, beyond our doctrinal situation, we want to find stuff that works. I want to find ways of actually being a better person and more free. So that's why I guess I like the word trust, and trust in a very kind of pragmatic way. So if you like to cook and you have 5 knives in your kitchen, but there's always one knife you always like to use. You kind of have faith in that knife. You trust that knife. You use that knife. It's an implement that really helps you. So there's that aspect of faith which is utilitarian. It's useful. So like say in Theravada Buddhism, there's some things which I have no faith in that utilitarian way. Like if people talk about nagas or devas, chay, naga shmaga, I don't really, it's not my cup of tea. I'm not saying it's wrong. I have said it's, I could be conceited. I can say, well, just because I don't experience it, but it's not a pragmatic part of my tool chest, I suppose. So when there are discussions of that, my mind just kind of fogs over. Maybe, okay, great. So when I was in Wellington, a Burmese monk came through who apparently had some visionary powers. There were all kinds of asuras or pretas or one of those guys coming over the mountains into our monastery. I said, oh, interesting. So what? I wasn't interested. He was very interested. That's an extreme. And then also just in terms of the Buddhist texts. Say, for myself, I find Abhidhamma uninteresting. I'm just not interested in it. So, in that sense, I don't have faith in it, or it's not that I don't trust it. It's just not a tool that appeals to me at all. In fact, for my own character, it's counterproductive because it produces too much thought. It's not saying it's right or wrong. It's just my own preference. So there's a kind of, I think, personal evolution of sada, which isn't just about belief. I think people who relate sada to just believing and not have a kind of contemplative, investigative mindset, I think they do themselves harm because they're just stuck in intellect. They're just stuck in belief. So you take something which is, kind of like the born again movement, where we're right and they're wrong, and that whole that story I have from Wellington, where I don't tell this story a lot, but I had a couple of sessions teaching in Auckland, actually. And I was pretty tired, and I was just going for a morning walk before the next session. And this guy comes up to me and says, "You're all wrong." Well, I just want to go for a walk, man. It's only Jesus that saves. I said, "Great, okay, fine. Leave me alone." You have to convert to Jesus, and that I think that doctrinal approach to spirituality is quite obnoxious, I think, for all of us. But you will find it in Theravada Buddhism too, that maybe only Theravada Buddhism is correct and Mahayana is not correct, all that. And that's not contemplative or reflective. So for me, what the Buddhist teaching is a reflective and contemplative teaching rather than a doctrinal teaching. So if I can't contemplate something, I just have to believe it. I kind of believe or disbelieve, but it's not really important in my evolution of saddha, of faith. So then, why did I come to this? Why did I come to this? I came for the breakfast. No, so that's secondary, honest. Uh, Ajahn Chah would say, "Did you come for breakfast? Did you come for the menu?" Obviously not. Well, I came to this because as a child, I had some kind of non-experiences that were so profoundly different, but that I couldn't remember, coming out of deep sleep, that I was dissatisfied with life until I could find those. And they were so deeply rooted in my psyche, I didn't even know they were there. But inevitably, I would try the things that my age group was doing or whatever, and I'd try, and I might be good at it or not good at it, and but this isn't it. So I couldn't invest any energy in doing whatever that should be done. This isn't it. So my father always thought I was a quitter. I should follow something through. I said, I don't know, but it's not it. It was frustrating for my father. And so but there was this subconscious sense of otherness that kept calling me. So that wasn't doctrinal, but it was real. And then, of course, university, within 2 weeks, this isn't it either. And so that was a disaster. Anyway, long story short, I ended up in India reading Krishnamurti, and that whole understanding came to me for one day. I said, "Oh, finally." So that was like 20 years of existential despair. I mean, I also did fun things on the way and crazy things as one does, but the fundamental uh, force that compelled me to keep traveling, keep looking, keep asking, keep reading, keep trying things was this sense of there's something in consciousness in me which is so different. What is that? So then, upon reading Krishnamurti, I soon met an American who was a bhikkhu, and then he talked about the lifestyle of a bhikkhu, because I had come to the conclusion, even though that experience had gone away, I knew I needed a lifestyle. So then he talks about Buddhism, and I get, oh yeah, look at that. That's kind of fitting what I want to do. And then he says, yeah, and there's this thing called bhikkhu, called Buddhist monk. Hey, what's that? Never heard of it. And so my faith arose from a man who I trusted, a man who had his own strong faith. And so Sada arose, okay, I'd like to try being a bhikkhu, whatever that is. And then I ended up in Thailand, and I didn't have a teacher, but I was a Samanera, and then someone took me to Luangpor Cha. And then Luangpor Cha had all the qualities of that which I was looking for, like silence and compassion. So Sada arose with Luangpor Cha, but it was never doctrinal. It was very, very realistic and very earthy in that way. And then subsequently Luangpor Sumedho, and then I try stuff in Theravada Buddhism. So I try this and I try that, and read this and read that. Well, I soon, from Ajahn Chah's instruction, I realized you don't have to read anymore. You need some information. And I had enough from being an Indian studying. I had enough sense of dependent origination, three characteristics, Four Noble Truths, that I really had the background, not in any, deep, insightful way, but in a structural, intelligent way. And then Luangpor Cha says to me, stop reading and go inwards. Yeah, you're right. I think too much. You're right. So again, faith arises from an instruction which is helpful and useful. Don't read so much. And then Luangpor Sumedho, even more so. Then he says, no, go take this Four Noble Truths, take the word of the Buddha, which is a little booklet that he went through 80 times, and which had the structure of the Four Noble Truths. He said, take that and just keep working on that. And I saw, yeah, he's got the goods too. I have faith in you. So I take that and I start to really try to deepen what are these Four Noble Truths. So then say, well, this isn't just my life story, it's just the evolution of faith, which is still in line with the kind of the doctrine of Theravada Buddhism. But again, it's what works. So then I try fasting. And where am I coming from? I'm coming from an idea of ka-kilate, kill kilesas, and toraman kilate, which proves to be a total disaster. Just a disaster for me. 30 years later, Ajahn Jayasari says, well, Torman Kilate might be better translated as frustrate your desires. Oh, thanks a lot. 30 years later, after all that suffering I went through. But that, so faith and really working hard and really trying hard and, really, really doing it doesn't work. It's an absolute disaster. So the attenuation of my own way of approaching it begins to be more mature. So when I hear a discourse, calculate and really fight, I said, maybe for you. But for me, no, I don't have any faith in you, mate. And then someone else says something else, like Luangpor Sumedho says, make conscious your fear. Oh, bring loving kindness to your fear. Relax more, Viradhammo. Now, okay, his language is speaking to my nisaya, my challenges. Okay, I have faith in you. I have trust in you. But I'm always listening. I'm saying, so if he gives me some instruction, yeah, it doesn't work for me. So I'm always using my critical faculty and basically just seeing cause and effect. Or then I read in the like Visuddhimagga, like things like Asubhagamatana, you know, all the lovely corpses that we can contemplate, and death meditations and skeletons and guts and gore and intestines and whoa, because it's Halloween kind of stuff. And doesn't no I try it, so I go to a autopsies in Sri Raj. Mondays were good, lots of bodies for the weekend. Because they let monks, like, I wouldn't go often because I was in Ubon, but if I was doing a visa, I'd try to go to Sri Raj. So I'd go and I'd see a corpse being cut up and so on. And it kind of pacified my mind, but on that whole Asuba side, no thanks. So no faith, no trust. But you read other ajahns, other teachers, yeah, that really works for me. Great. And that's one of the beautiful things of Buddhist practice, is that you have so many teachers who have tried different things and been successful in their trying, that you can not so much pick and choose, but you can find you can find your own character in a certain Kuba Ajahn or a teacher, a lay teacher, or a friend who is on your same wavelength. So Luangpor Sumedho very much, he's Western educated, he has a strong intellect, he has a lot of self-disparagement, etc., etc. So he could really understand me. So, whereas another monk who may be like, maybe a very, very lustful character, has a very lustful mindset, and then does a lot of a super meditation. He says, it's great stuff. Yeah, for you, mate, not for me. And so I don't feel intimidated by not wanting to do that. I don't have to do everything. So always it's just very pragmatic. What works? What works? What works? What works? And then um, having like tremendous faith in Luangpor Cha, he said, well, it's going to take you a while to clear out some of the rubbish that your mind has been involved in or conditioned by. And basically, you're just going to have to be patient for 5 years at least before the mind's going to have, kind of settled down. That's a huge ask, for your teacher to say, you don't know anything. You don't know anyone. You don't know the culture. And he's asking me just hang in for 5 years with sticky rice and numprik. He said, can I do this? Yes, I can, because I have faith in the teacher, and tremendous faith, because this man knows. So there's that deep, heartfelt sada to the guru, to the teacher. And that deep trust is something that is very powerful, say, in Indian culture. You take refuge with your guru, with your teacher. And sometimes it's hard to find a teacher where you have so much trust. But I was so fortunate that I had two very, very good teachers, still do, and also very good Kalyanamitta in that way. So that aspect of Sada, of that relationship with a teacher, that guru relationship, is sometimes it's like, I know along Westerners, they'll just want to be bhikkhus and ordain, and they won't have that heartfelt connection to a teacher. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Perhaps because you don't find that many Ajahn Chahs so charismatic. But anyway, I had that, and that carried me a lot. It carried me through a lot of those early years of Wat Pah Pong or Nasakas. It was like physically quite demanding and emotionally very, very lonely oftentimes, and just frustrating. And all Ajahn Chah just says, "Wat ton," and just come to the morning meditation, come to the evening meditation, go on Pindapad, learn how to make a deenbot, learn how to sew your robes, upatak the ajans, etc., etc. Okay, I'll give up to that. So faith. Why? Not because I thought it was the coolest lifestyle on the planet, but because the teacher said, this will work. This does work. You just keep at it. And yeah, sure enough, after a while, this is a good place. These are good people. My mind's still a mess, but now gratitude starts to arise more and more, a sense of belonging, a group of Kalyanamitta who are very diligent, and it all grows. So the faith gets stronger in Sangha, naturally, right? But it's not like I believe in every bhikkhu in the world is the best thing since sliced bread. It's not that kind of a thing. But the kind of belief in community and living a communal life and sharing this life with others becomes very important because it works. So just this kind of evolution. And now the kind of, as my bodily bits start to fall off and all of that, and there's obviously this tremendous gratitude for all the goodness, and then the faith in that. Yeah, gratitude's important. Yeah, and the heart's important, and compassion is important, and enlightenment isn't that important. That took a long time. That took a long time because that idea of getting enlightened, this kind of male, I'm gonna conquer Mara, that was just not a good idea. But I had a lot of faith in that. But it was the wrong faith because it was too much ego, too much me, too much becoming. And the way that faith was altered was by basically injuring myself, hurting myself, not stabbing myself, but just the injuries of wrong effort. Is that a way to say it? The injury you do yourself when you make effort from non-compassion, from not respecting yourself, or just kind of pushing. Maybe that's just a very male thing. I don't know. But then that's the way one learns. So then faith from error, pit pen crew, in time, mistake is teacher. That's a big part of faith. You try this, no. So meditations which were very object oriented, which were really, really like pushed focus and holding focus for long periods of time, they didn't work. That's why I talk the way I talk, obviously. And so okay, maybe that's what the book says, and maybe like watching the end of my nose, I found that was like didn't work. And why would I want to watch the end of my nose anyway? So ideas of just holding the mind and like focusing it never appealed to me, never worked for me. So obviously I teach from a more, kind of a different perspective. But for you, maybe that doesn't work. Maybe it does. Maybe some of it does. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. So the faith in my own doing, my own practice comes from all the errors, but they weren't errors. They were just, you just try stuff out. And I think that's when I think the ideas of intuition become important for me, where if someone is suggesting a way of working and practicing, and I hear it, and I know I've probably tried it, I just, sure, okay, I'm not drawn to it. I'm not intimidated by it. Just doesn't interest me. So then also because I'm not a born Theravada Buddhist, and I like to read across cultures, then my understanding and my trust and faith in these ways of thinking about awareness, the unconditioned, these kinds of things lead me to other literature. So if I read other literature, I'm always looking for awareness. I'm always interested, first of all, in the inner realization of the writer. If it's just some and I said, does that, that sound, I have faith in that. And I listen to the person or I read them or whatever. And then I gain a lot from that. I get a lot of like insights across, like this one teacher that influences me a lot. He's died, Jean Klein, who he was from France and went to India and so on. But the way he talks, his kind of Western way of talking about things, fits my own experience. So then I have faith in him. So my faith in words and language structures moves outside Theravada Buddhism. Not because I have rejected Theravada Buddhism, but I have faith that realization is across cultures through time. I don't see it as being particularly, Theravada Buddhist. To me, my faith in humanity is one that everyone yearns for peace. And the realization of peace seems to me has to be the same thing. I have that kind of faith. But then when I read literature, I'm coming from this trust and faith in certain ways of thinking, and especially around awareness, what that is. And then I discovered it. Then I discovered it in Rumi, in Sufism, maybe. And then I read Rumi, and he talks so much about love, the whole bhakti tradition. And I thought, yeah, that's very appealing. And then I go back to Theravada. I say, the Brahma Viharas, maybe that's what enlightenment's about. So all the time, my insight and my understanding is maturing, hopefully, and in particular to what works for me. But always, it's very. I'm a real pragmatist. I like to make things, and I like to make them so they work. And so if I try something and it doesn't work, then so what? Why do I want to do that? So then I try a mantra like it for some reason. I love you. I've always loved you. I will always love you. That's. But obviously, my whole movement of my religious or spiritual life is now towards more heart, and so that language comes up, and I try it, and when that works. So faith is a very dynamic thing for me, very, very dynamic, and in some sense, it's unassailable. If you tell me that the practices of love are not in line with liberation, I say, fine. That's your opinion. So I think when your trust is in your own experience and it works, it's different than you just having a kind of doctrinal idea of what's right or wrong. That's where you get argumentation. But your own experience of peace is not something to be argued about, or your own experience of open-heartedness isn't really up for argument because it works. It is. It's true. Someone might say to me, well, that's not really enlightenment, Viradhammo. That's just being sentimental. Yeah, maybe. But I don't have faith in you. I don't, you can say that to me, but you're really nothing to me. Now, if Luangpor Sumedho or Luangpor Cha would say that, and they would question me, I'd say, let me look at that. Yeah, let me look at that. They might see something in me. But the ultimate test of faith for me is me, because it works for me, not in an egotistical, selfish way, in a way that speaks to my own freedom. So then go back like to something like Four Noble Truths. I find that really appealing. Yeah. So as you notice, I like to use the language of the three tanhas a lot and the counter language. I use that a lot. So those are my knives, right? My chisels. I use them a lot. I use that language a lot because it works for me. So I have a lot of faith in that. Suffering works for me because I suffer. Devas don't work for me because I don't know. It doesn't. Relics don't work for me. If someone says, to be honest, when someone gives relics to the monastery, so what am I going to do with these things now? And others, holy relics. Well, I'm not being disrespectful, just being honest. And so that my faith doesn't rise in that. But if I meet a person who's very compassionate, like the Dalai Lama, wow, so my faith arise. It rises really, really strongly. Um, so I think it is a matter of trusting your own intelligence in that way of causality, but not just as an opinion. What works for you, what doesn't work for you. So that was a kind of me again. And then when is it self-doubt? I don't really understand that part of the question, but I would guess it means like, when do you lose faith? And is it self-doubt? I guess I would say like, you stop having faith in something that doesn't work. It just doesn't work, I suppose. When is it insufficient, saddha? When is it insufficient, saddha? How could saddha ever be insufficient? You keep just having trust, don't you? Or maybe you'd say, like, when does a bhikkhu disrobe? When he has insufficient saddha. Yeah, he would have insufficient saddha in the robe, but I think he'd still be searching for truth. Don't you? Anyway, I don't really get where that second part comes from. Yeah, I've had doubts, sure, but never doubts about my goal. I would say I've never had doubts about my yearning for this deep peace. And maybe that's a peace that I'm lucky that I have, that I'm lucky that I have. So walking meditation, does it have to be repetition of a short distance, or can it be a long walk without distance with some awareness techniques? Well, basically, you can say meditation is everything all the time. That's your basic definition, as long as you're reflective and you're not just absorbed into foolish and silly things. But the thing about walking meditation is that because it's a formal posture and your wandering mind is interrupted by the ends of the path, it helps. Just like sitting cross-legged, unless your knees are bad, helps because you're contained in this posture. But that doesn't mean meditation is just a posture. It's just a reflected mind. But there was a good story with Ajahn Chah. There was one monk who was just wandering around the monastery, and Haranyavro, that was his name. And Luangpor Chah would be sitting there and talking with people, and then this guy would come around with Luangpor said, Haranyavro, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing walking meditation, Luangpor. He says, no, you're doing bird watching. Does pace matter? Well, you have the Mahasi method of really slow walking, and then you have like what Luangpor Chah taught us, just to walk normally. It doesn't really matter. Um, just see how, like with a lot of these questions, you just experiment with these things, and you get faith. I say you get trust in how a methodology might or might not work, and you don't have to have one methodology. But I found personally what I like is a 30 paces if I have. Not, I can use a small area, and I like to walk according to energy. So especially when I was a younger monk, I'd have a lot of restless energy. I'd just walk it off, that kind of thing. And then as my mind calmed down, I would walk more slowly. And I found it really wonderful way to because we were asked and expected to do quite long periods of formal practice. It's just a matter of being a monk. So doing 4 or 5 hours of practice was considered normal. normal kind of thing. And so the alternating sitting and walking was really, really good. And I did like that form, that structure, back and forth, back and forth. And just, you kind of get into a rhythm and a flow, and the awareness gets into that rhythm and flow. I like that. A lot of monks like walking that way. If I have difficulty sustaining long sits, would adding a session of micro sits, short sits, be a solution? Again, you have a question like that, you try. Because that's going to be your best answer. You just get an intuition. Okay, what if I do that? Whatever that is. and then judge for yourself. Oh, that was a good experiment. So some people say, well, I'm just going to give up meditation for 2 weeks. I'm going to try that. Okay. And then they'll say, that was a good thing to do. Now I feel refreshed. Or that was a stupid thing to do. Whatever. But definitely just these kind of questions, just try it. Just try it and see. And that's faith. That's what, faith arises from trying stuff out. You get solutions that way. And this one I didn't quite understand. How important is precision in our observing the mind? Sometimes choiceless awareness leaves me feeling relaxed but drifting. Does precision lead to better discernment or understanding? Well, maybe that comes from the Mahasi methodology of like noting. Maybe, I don't know. But I guess the question for me is, why do you meditate? Why be precise or imprecise? What's the whole point of it? And the whole point of it for me right now is silence and the open heart. So now I have a way of considering a standard that from my own experience, I think is useful. Yeah, silence. I think I'll go towards silence and open heart. Yeah, that's good. So then my meditation, the efforts I make, is from that consideration. So if I find that the heart's closing because of something, oh hey, what's that? So I go to that. Or the mind's really busy. Oh wait, what's that? And then I go to silence. So I'm adjudicating the whole exercise according to my trajectory or my understanding or my sense of what the holy life is about. If I don't have any sense of that, then I guess the basic thing would be, why do I suffer? It is suffering. Um, and so sometimes choiceless awareness leaves me feeling relaxed, but drifting. So then you make that, okay, what does drifting feel like? And so then all of a sudden that makes you more aware. What is drifting? And your mind is questioning and looking and observing. Precision, the thing that I would, for myself, precision in objects is the work of carpentry or the work of weaving or the work of cutting an apple. I want precision when I cut my apple because I don't want to cut my finger off. So that kind of focused work is okay. But as I said earlier, I never was attracted to that in meditation. I was attracted more to space, to openness, to welcoming. That language attracting, which some people know that they like to have sharp focus and that. So maybe it's personal. That's why I guess I found Luangpor Sumedho's Sound of Silence or Akasa meditations, space meditations. I found helpful. In sitting, listening to silence, I find myself drifting to my breath, as in my attention shifted to the breath. Is that okay? Fine. You're aware of it. And like if you've been doing Anapanasati for 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, now obviously that's going to be attractive. Your attention, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just stay in the moment. With silence, how do I know that I'm on the right track? Well, what's the wrong track? Sorry. Is there a wrong track? Well, the wrong track is not knowing how things are. So the wrong track here would be not knowing doubt as doubt. Huh? So you kind of, that happens in meditation. You listen to the silence. Breath is going to the breath. Am I doing this right? Better write a question. Whereas the practice is, oh, this is a feeling of not knowing. Then it's right. You always come back to that. I'm a terrible person with doubters. It's, the kind of, I just throw it back to you. But it's true, isn't it? Because that doubt is just a sankhara. It's an object that arises and ceases, and that which is not an object knows that. You keep coming back to that. But if you have you know, a stronger doubt than that, and not just then you try something out. You kind of think, well, I'll do anapanasati really fiercely, or I'll just listen to the sound of silence. I'll really do this, and this is what happens. But quite often it's just the mind not trusting in awareness, I suppose. Huh? That would be a way of put it. If you trust in awareness, so let's say you have mind super quiet, it drifts to the breath. You kind of know what's going on. And then thought arises. Is this really it? Must be more than this. Huh? Now, if you trust in awareness, you know that as an object. You don't trust in awareness, you become the subject. Oh, I should do something else. Maybe if I do something else, and then you're not trusting in awareness. You're trusting in the kind of fixing of things. Not that that's wrong, but if you were to do the mantra like trusting in awareness, it'd be interesting what would happen to that doubt. Would you see doubt as doubt? Because if you see doubt as doubt, the mind goes very quiet. But if you don't see doubt as doubt, and then you pick it up with more thinking, the mind becomes active. That's the way it works, isn't it? You analyze, you think. So, not that that's wrong, but if you are moving towards silence, if that's what this person is interested in, then seeing a thought come and go, it arises and ceases in that silence. Trusting in awareness would just allow it to arise and cease. But if the person has a habit or a tendency to always answer a question, then you'd be caught in thinking, wouldn't be free from thinking. I would be grateful for guidance. For some time, I've had panic attacks. I live alone, and after my husband's passing, the old wounds of family rejection have returned, leaving me with strong fear and the belief that I am unlovable. I hope to rely on the Dhamma rather than medication or therapy. Would Luangpor recommend practical ways to meet panic in the moment, daily practices to calm the body and nurture metta and mindfulness, and reflections on anatta to loosen identification with fear? Any suttas or chants to focus on would also be helpful. How to ground the body during a panic surge, what short daily practices stabilize heart mind, how to relate to the I am unlovable story in line with anatta. Can't do it. It's too big, isn't it? You need kalyanamitta. So to this person, I can give you, what, a 5-minute answer for a problem which is deeply, deeply disturbing. So this is where you really need friendship. And to dismiss therapy when you said, I hope to rely on Dhamma rather than medication or therapy. There's a lot of Dhamma in therapy. Find a good therapist who has a good understanding of anatta and is compassionate and a good listener is incredibly helpful. Incredibly helpful. This stuff you can't do alone. You can't sit in your room and sort this out. It's too difficult. And not that like I don't know who this person is, so maybe you do have friends, but cultivate kalyanamitta, cultivate friends who will listen and not just give you solutions all the time or say it'll be all right or let's think about something else, that kind of thing. Like, for this kind of, you need a really, really good listener and someone who has experience and someone who's not afraid of panic attacks and all the stuff where that comes from. And then you can get into a good dialogue. So obviously, if you have a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni or a teacher nearby, go to them, and then they have to get to know you. Like if this person was living near the monastery, I would spend a lot of time listening, a lot of time. Then I'd poke some questions, and then I'd get a sense of it, and then the person would come back. And then, I mean, I don't do therapeutic work and so on, but I counsel a lot. So it might take a whole year before I'd feel confident. Person would feel confident. And that's the depth of Kalyanamitta. But this is so hard to do on your own. So to this person, be kind to yourself and don't be afraid of therapists. I mean, you have to find the right one. So a therapist which is increasing a sense of ego, and you don't want that. But I know some really terrific men and women who have Buddhist backgrounds who are helpful in ways for particular types of um, damaged psyches that I'm not very good at. They're much, much better at it than me, although we have similar understandings because they have the experience, they have the methodologies. So don't be afraid of that. Yeah, medication, I can see you don't want to go there.